Hey guys, so I've just been feeling just a little tiny bit better every day. I was able to go to church yesterday. Um, so one thing that I don't know, it just came to my mind to go ahead and just put this out here because it was interesting that someone was trying to claim that I was saying what was on exactly on this website that evil influence da 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 and that God will rain down like judgment, consequences. This is not something I believe, but someone tried to say that I believe that. But interestingly enough, I have hard evidence that they were responding to this exact blog post saying, yes, I want to be a part of these castings and casting evil out of anything and everything and a part of in this blog post about casting out evil right there. Casting out evil. Yeah, that person publicly was supporting it, but then trying to say I did, but then I was bad because I don't. I have to drink water. Sorry. I'll try to get through this. I just watched the comeback podcast and I just almost screamed. I was like, oh no. No. They tried to say that Joe Smith married Helen. He married a 14-year-old. Like they were married, you guys, but they weren't. They weren't. Let's go into that, please. No. Sealed, betrothed. We can bring that word back. Betrothed. That was something that Brian C. Hill's wife was smart enough to point out. I don't know why I've never heard him. It was always his wife. It's always the women that were like, oh, they're just like engaged. They're really just engaged. Like even Wilfred Woodruff, I found this girl, Emma Smith, one of his wives, was time and eternity. But Helen Mar Kimball, hold on. Bear with me. I'm going to do this anyway, even though I'm still recovering. My throat's still not okay. It was cauterized because I had a tonsillectomy. But I've just been having so many health problems. I just need to get rid of anything that will consistently, Girly ENT just was consistently getting me sick. So I got sick repeatedly in the fall. Anyway, Helen's own poetry. So she wrote so many books. She was defending plural marriage. It was for eternity alone. So you have to have a time ceiling to be married. They were not married. No offense to that girl that worked with Book of Mormon Central and I know people have, a lot of church historians, I didn't think any of them would watch my channel, but they all know about me, but they only know bad things about me. But I did, I think they would ever give me the light of day. And, well, they haven't given me the time of day. But I'm not perfect. And but I don't come down off my stance because I've heard way too many of them and I call them out in interviews. I will comment. I seem mean and I might seem contentious to people like Utah women or people like that just don't believe in ever disagreeing with a Utah church historian. Deborah does. Because too many of them try to paint Joseph as if he is like a pedophile, as if he really married these younger women. It does seem like there were many studying Joseph Smith's plural marriages, these women in their mid-20s, mid-30s. He did get sealed to them as a plural wife. They were sealed as a plural wife, like a wife, and they're in their 20s, so they're really trying to, let's be married. They just disappear. Like nothing came of it. They never moved in. And it just happened to be, okay, well, there's these two girls just barely over 18, the Partridge sisters. Finally, Emma was like, well, we know them, they're living here, And those were the ones that So I don't know if those women really canceled their, but there was a section that canceled the sealing. It's just from my research, my opinion, it seems like quite a few maybe just weren't working out. And that they hadn't done anything to have babies, and these women were just freaked out by it and were like, no. And he was nice enough to be like, okay. And they go off and marry someone else. Right? So they just committed, but then sort of broke it, and that is the weird, very imperfect things about it. Even though he's a prophet, you think he can find someone that's perfectly gonna live it. There weren't, and so sometimes they did think maybe these younger girls, but there was a more sinister thing going on in Nauvoo that's not something Joseph was a part of. So I have a video. I had it unlisted. I'll make sure it's not unlisted anywhere that it's public. But people have just been on my case. I just kind of took anything controversial off because I know people are like, oh, you're controversial. I'm like, no, I'm not. I'm really not. But yeah, let's go back to Helen again. So it was her father's idea, and she even said, like, just click on all these links and find. I'm not going to go through every little thing because I have many videos where I did go into all this. And her father wanted them to be sealed, so she's 14. But Chauncey Higby, young guy, in 1842, as spiritual wifery is being lived. And that Chauncey is telling women that he's just walking home from church and then follows them home and is like, hey, I want to get what I want. I'm going to get what I want right now. And, just very aggressive. He was just after the physical. It was all about sex and this spiritual wifery. Well, we can be spiritually married. I'll just say we are just right now. And what that was akin to is what literally how they lived prostitution in the Middle East. And it probably was the same back then. Temporary wives. So men will just grab a girl off the street and he'll pay for her. She has no rights in the Middle East. That's how Chauncey Higby lived. It's evil. And he's not respecting any of these women's, he's not getting consent. As you read their stories, they're all saying no, 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 no. Sorry if this is triggering to you. But then we've got Michelle Stone accusing Abraham of that and accusing every man that lived polar marriage as being a Chauncey Higby. They weren't a Chauncey Higby. Joseph wasn't. He saw that Emily Partridge was slightly afraid and said, you want me to stop talking? She says, yeah. And all these people were calling him a Jeffrey Epstein and a narcissist and saying it's like Nexium and all this stuff. It just is not. But what Chauncey Higby lived and J.C. Bennett lived, who were excommunicated. And unfortunately, William Law was. And there was a whole room full of men. There were a lot of men to fill a whole room. Enough to be part of the 200 men that stormed Carthage jail that did live something very similar to this, temporary wives. They were abusing women. A lot of them were younger men. Because Chauncey Higby was still a young, maybe 23 when Joseph Smith died. 24, I don't know, still in his mid-20s, because he was like not even 20. I think he was 19 in 1842 when he's excommunicated, just barely been baptized for 2 years or something like that. A lot of younger members would wait till their teens to get baptized. I think Joseph Smith III was almost a teenager when he finally got baptized. Well, I think he was baptized before his father died, but he wasn't baptized at 8. So I recommend, I'm just going to link to this video because I really dive into all of it, and I just even go into all of these sources, and I give links to everything. And I just address everything, how people are accusing Joseph Smith of being like these evil, bad men. He's not evil, bad, but his wife, I think Sarah really was, she committed adultery and was excommunicated for that. And I don't know if he was left the church, came back or something like that, but he he was basically suicidal after this whole, he starts finding out, but JC Bennett's throwing this lie that no, Joseph's doing it, right? That's what guilty people do, is they will start accusing, and often they're so dramatic and they're so good at lying that they're believed. And the person that's just like, oh, well, you should just believe me, I'm being honest, aren't. I've experienced that lately. It's a horrible feeling. So I have a lot of empathy reading all this about Joseph Smith. I'm like, yeah, I feel just a tiny bit about someone who's doing something awful, who's doing something that's just not right. Even if it's just to us, I don't know. It just gets weirder and darker about someone else that it keeps coming after me. And it's very sad. I was just watching, I've been really shy my whole life, and all these people like, oh, you're just too sensitive. Everyone likes you, people aren't thinking that much about you until you're me. And someone has just spread the most horrible rumors about you and twisted things and lied. But then people repeatedly, even recently, just want to make sure I know that they are gossiping about me, that they don't like me, and that it's not in my head, and that them glaring at me like I wanted to think, as I get up and bar my testimony, that these people glaring at me, maybe it was something else. No, they just let me know. No, we've heard what this person said. It's just like, but it's not true. So I just sent a bunch of evidence directly and privately. Tried to share what I could publicly, but anyway, that person was really mad when I brought all this up. But I don't know if she, there's just a lot of people like kind of how we're living spiritual life free. And I was watching some of that again today. Some of that hidden true crime, addressing it. This guy that Julie Rao was friends with, that was high up there, and he was like, we should all live spiritual life. We're like, no. The church, Brigham Young denounced it. Joseph Smith denounced it. Excuse me. I'm sorry. I'm having such a hard time. I just burped. That's really gross, I know, but I'm having trouble talking, so I won't keep this long. So I'm just going to give you a link to each of these. I'm sure that girl is well-meaning and just trying to keep her testimony, but it is just not true. And I just feel so strongly that it's upset the other side of the veil. I think there's a ripple effect anytime we say anything, especially publicly, like about Joseph Smith. We just got to be careful and trying to speak for him and say what mistakes he made, how he messed up. And maybe he received Kimball did. But as I've read more and more about Chauncey Higby and these, I'm going to pull up the subpoena here. They did try to put him in jail. He was an RAPIST. And it was them just publicly sharing all of it. These statements from these women that were sexually assaulted by him. End of May 1844. And then it was Chauncey Higby and him and William Law. They're both like together. William Law wasn't pious. He'd committed adultery. He had no problem with men being with other women that they weren't married to. He had a problem with having 50 kids, which quite a few of them did, They didn't have as many as the Kingston clan, my goodness, but like Brigham Young had enough money. Like the ones that had enough money did. The ones that didn't, they were at least like, well, just, even then they were like, have as many kids and as many wives as you financially can afford. And it's weird, and it's still, they probably didn't live it perfectly. I'm sure Joseph Smith did make some mistakes. That is in section 132, that there was a transgression there, but it's not specific about what he did wrong. My opinion, having mass amounts of eternity only sealings in the church's website saying that as well, that Emma was pushing that might have been a little bit of a mistake there, because it was happening with women that were married. But their husbands were scumbags. So Meg Stout's book, Reluctant Polygamist, kind of points out like maybe her husband was kind of, or that person's husband was like, and a lot of them were leaving. So, but they also wanted to have that commitment and to get exaltation. I think my father was like, no, we gotta sound too good in 2025. But it was just sort of like, they could still get their work done or find someone else if their husband was abusive, because quite a few of them were just, if they're connected to, here's Chauncey Higby, we the people of the state of Illinois, to the sheriff of said county. Hold on. I'll let you guys just read it while you drink some water. So you see it's 1842. And this is in the fall. But it was in the spring that they found out all these women. And that was when the Relief Society was instituted. So Relief Society was helping take down a sexual predator in Nauvoo, take down a prostitution ring, basically, because Chauncey Higby with, there's Sarah Miranda Bates. So I guess they were summoning her is what this specific thing is. But they were really trying to go legal with him, and then he becomes a lawyer. And then he starts accusing Joseph Smith of spiritual wifery. There's not too much there with that. But some of the women that were mentioned that were abused were near the age of Helen. Like they were a little bit older, but they were still very young. Because Chauncey Higby was young. He was part of the Nauvoo Legion, and my opinion is that Heber C. Kimball just wanted to protect her. So he understood this idea that they were coming up with, that, well, we could be sealed for eternity only, and these women will be married when they're 18, and they'll have babies. And it sounds like, oh, sure, the church is telling you that and all, but as I've researched, so this video right here in August 19th, 2022, I just went through to see, okay, how old were these women that Brigham Young married when they had children, which is the evidence of them consummating the marriage. Not a single one of them were under 18. Not a single one of John Taylor, Wilfred Woodruff, or Lorenzo Snow's wives were under 18 when they had children. So there was that rule. So they were not married. It seems like Joseph was sort of doing this eternity only sealing thing, and then time later on. And so Helen was kind of understanding that. And again, Emma was a part of all this, right? So she was aware. And the church has said that they think Emma was encouraging these eternity. And even Joe Smith III knew about it. He's like, well, I was just hoping she was just more of those eternity only sealings, which he thought those were legit. He believed those, the eternity only sealings. He was like, well, I was just hoping Melissa Lott really was eternity only. But she's one of the ones I thought maybe she really did cohabitate with my dad, He's like, well, I believe, she seemed old enough, big enough, I don't know. Anyway. But the children are the evidence. That's the only evidence we have other than their statements. And so there's just no evidence that Joseph Smith, Brigham Young, or all these other higher ups that, interestingly enough, Zelph and Shelf, they were marrying children. They just were not. It was betrothals. And so again, that's what Brian C. Hill's wife was pushing, because it's true. They were basically like, we're engaged, but we're also kind of married. So it's like Mary and Joseph. It was bad that she was pregnant, but they were going to end her she was already kind of married, but just not full on married, right? Bringing back the old, right? Where did the idea come from? It came from ancient days, really. So, and it might have been a part of the culture back then too, sort of. but not really. It wasn't really happening. Like it wasn't legal to you when you were at the altar and getting married. But you get what I'm saying? It was that level of commitment. It was almost like they had to get a divorce, But no one was forced into plural marriage. Parents were full and involved. They had to get consent of parents, even if they were older. Even these girls that were over 18, Joseph Smith was asking the older brother of Lucy Walker or just anyone that was in charge. He wasn't hiding it from the parents or anyone that was. So Melissa Lott's parents knew, and she was over 18. So Lucy Walker was in her 18th year of life. She was the youngest one at 17. But that's her 18th year of life at 17 years old. So, no, Joseph was not married to a 14. She was turning 15 really soon, by the way. But they weren't married. And she ended up marrying Horace Whitney. And so for her first child, she was over 18. And I think she was his first wife. So Helen Cord married Horace Whitney, a brother, a close friend, Sarah Ann Whitney. Sort of knew okay. And anyway. So then you're like, why did Joseph not have kids with any of these women? You can just walk up to him and ask him during the millennium. We'll figure it out. And he might just say, mind your own beeswax, and walk away. And you'll just still get over it. And it bothers me, and I just have a feeling it probably bothers him how lightly we treat some of these things. Sometimes I just hear things from some church historians that downplay Chauncey Higby, and I get upset. Like, no! So instead of me leaving her comment on Comeback Podcast, I think she was thinking this girl was going to say this. Or at least knew all this, and so I was just kind of shocked that she just said, well, he did, and he made a mistake, and they shouldn't have married a 14-year-old, and he did married a 14-year-old, and it was weird, and I don't agree with it, and affects my testimony too. It was just like, no. He didn't marry her. They held hands and were committed for eternity or sealing, because her father wanted to also be sealed to them, but the protection from that was she couldn't date. And her dad liked that because there were, according to Helen, there weren't good men at these dances. And then he could give this excuse, well, you're engaged to the prophet. So she couldn't go and be around Chauncey Higby and all of his friends, these black legs or whatever, all these people, I don't know what that means, but that was just doing bad things because they were abusing women and doing bad stuff. I mean, there's always been RAPISTs, even without conquering spiritual wifery. It's just going to happen anyway. But Chauncey took it to a whole new degree and level. So they had 4 statements from 4 women, and they said we have many more than this. They just got the consent of those 4 women. They tried to get Chauncey Higby arrested. They tried to take him to jail. He became a lawyer and starts accusing Joseph Smith of doing what he did. So is they're denouncing spiritual wifery, they're denouncing what he's doing. And it's this whole temporary spiritual wifery is this temporary wives thing. And how Chauncey lived it. Wasn't getting consent. I don't know if J.C. Bennett really was or was not, but he was abusive because he was a doctor. So Sarah Pratt, it's like going to her story there. You can watch this video, or some Pratt's wife. Probably thought she was just giving her like an exam or whatever, and then people walked in and it was some sexual activity going on there. But the more I've thought about her and felt judgmental, I've started to feel less judgmental. Like, I think he was a victim and abused, manipulated by J.C. Bennett. And it almost cost Orson's life because he was walking around without a hat on. I don't mean to laugh about it, but Brigham was like, he's not even wearing a hat. Because it was just like, that was their sunscreen. Like, and they knew sun was death back then because of skin cancer. Not that they knew that word, but they knew something about it. I'm sorry that this isn't a great video. I've worked hard on some of my older videos, and I'm going to end it right now, but I'm going to give a link to some of my older videos, and then giving a link to just about everything on here that I can, and hopefully you guys can just sleep better at night knowing Joseph Smith and none of his apostles were really marrying and moving in with and having children with young teenagers. It just wasn't happening.